Welcome back everybody to our series on K-means. In our last video, we did a high-level overview of kind of what K-means is and kind of the objective behind K-means, and then we also saw a visualization of kind of how it acts in action. And then we talked about our problem that we're going to try to solve, and we're going to now see how to get the data that we need from TD Ameritrade. So we kind of finished off here where we loaded our data into a data frame, and we were just kind of doing a simple transformation, so that way when we make our API calls, everything goes glorious. So couple things. Like I said in the last video, I am not going to be doing one request at a time. That would take way too long. But luckily for us, TD Ameritrade makes it really easy to make multiple requests at once. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take basically this data frame and we're going to break it into chunks. And I want it into chunks of 100. So the first thing I need to do is I need to define the size of the chunk. And so in this case, it's going to be 100. So I'm just going to define that as n. And then we're going to write exactly kind of how to break this. I will be using list comprehension just because I need it to be in a list. And so list comprehension does this really easily. We can do it in a one-liner. So all we're going to do is break the data frame into chunks. That's all we're going to do. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable called it symbols chunk. That's going to equal list comprehension. I'm going to say stock symbols. Oh, Lordy. And we're going to say I. So I plus, where's my I again? I plus n. And then we're going to say for I in range. And then we're going to say from 0 to stock symbols. And then we're going to do dot shape. And then we're going to say bracket 0 and then from n. Okay. Let's kind of look at this and see what's going on. Really here, this is kind of the important part. We're defining a range. So remember the range function kind of basically kind of returns like a list back to us in a sense. We start at 0 and we go the number of rows in our data frame, and we're going to take a step of n, where n is 100. So for each step in this range, basically take my stock symbol, my stock symbols data frame, and just simply take the rows from it. So just break it into little chunks. And when you do that, let's see what we get. So we should be having one chunk. So if I take the first one, telling you, it's going to be a spelling nightmare. You can see here, it's just creating a chunk. So it's basically like a portion of that data frame. And there's now 100 records, which is great. So now we have 100 records that have been broken into chunks. This is great when it comes to making the request. And so now from here, we need to create a list, or well, we don't really need to do that, but we're going to see just like an example of it. So from here, let's just grab a simple example. So grab an example so we can see the chunk. And so what it's going to look like is an example chunk would just be a list. We're going to take that first chunk. So we're going to say symbol. And we're going to take the first one from our list. We're going to grab the symbol column because it's a data frame and we can still select it. And then from here, show the first 5 items. And so we're going to say example chunk. And then I'm going to do bracket because I'm going to slice it. And I want the first 5. And lo and behold, you have 5 stock symbols. So this is really kind of the framework that we're doing. I took my data frame, I broke it into chunks, and now we're going to go to the API to make our request. Now, I know the TD Ameritrade particular YouTube series was pretty popular among the finance individuals out there, and so I will have a link here in case you haven't seen it yet. And then I also want to let people know, because I know there's been a couple comments, there seems to be some issues with authentication. I have been seeing those, and so I have been currently exploring some alternative options that we can do for authentication purposes. So when I get an update on that, I will be doing an additional video to kind of show you maybe an alternative method that might work a little bit better for some people. I don't know what's kind of going on. I think some of it's just kind of, I don't know. I think it's just some of it is just, the authentication stuff. Sometimes it's hard. It's just what it is. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is define the endpoint of our API. Now, I should have left this here, but I didn't. So we're going to create a new variable, endpoint. We're going to use a raw string. It's HTTPS, and then we're going to do : / API TD Ameritrade.com. We want version 1, and then we want the instruments endpoint. So that's where we get stock information from there. So that's our endpoint. Hopefully there was no typos. We're going to have to store all the requests that we get back to us. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a nice little easy way in a sense to get all the information. So let's use a dictionary to store it. So create a dictionary to store all of our info. And we'll give it something simple like stock dictionary, and then we'll put a space there. Okay, now the fun part. So we got to loop through each chunk. So loop through each chunk. And we're going to say for chunk in symbols underscore chunk. We got to define our payload. This is things like our API key. Some of the information that we want. So do we want fundamental data? Do we want, just a particular item? And then the symbols that we want to request. So we're going to define our payload. We're going to use a dictionary to do that. So we're going to create a new variable called payload. It's going to be a dictionary. The first key is going to be the first parameter of our request. It will be API key. And then I actually have my API key up here. That's what I imported. So I'm just going to put that here. You want to make sure you keep those private. And then we got projection. So projection, that will just give us the fundamental data that we need about our stock. And then we got symbol. And then we're going to say this is going to be a list. So it does expect a list. So we just take our chunk that we're currently at, and we're just going to take that symbol column. We're just going to take the symbol column and turn that into a list and put it into our payload. From here, we're going to make a request. And so we're going to create a new variable because we're going to get stuff sent back to us. It's going to be the content. And so we're going to say request.get because this is a get method. URL, well, that's just the endpoint, right? URL is the endpoint that we're going to be using. And then we got to pass through our parameters. Well, that's just the payload that we've defined up above, which are just simply our parameters. That's all. And then we're going to get a JSON string back. We got to convert that JSON string to a Python dictionary. So we're going to convert the JSON string to a dictionary. And so we're going to say data. We'll just call it data content dot, and then we're going to call the JSON method. And then this is where the fun stuff tends to break. So we need to wrap when we loop through our data in a try except statement, because there are some times where a particular key does not exist, but we need to make sure that key exists. And so we're going to say try, and we're going to say for stock in data. And then what we're going to do is we're going to call our stock dictionary, and we're going to have the key equal the data. We're going to take the stock that we're currently on, and then we're going to grab the CUS IP. This is a way for us to track it back. And then we're going to assign to that key basically all the fundamental data. So we're going to say data, the stock that we're currently on in the loop, and then I want all the fundamental data. We're going to see this is just a, what is it? It's just simply a dictionary of information. So a dictionary of all sorts of financial data. And I will be making sure to show an example before we actually put it in a data frame. Okay, so I'm going to let this go really quick, make sure there's no errors. Great, it looks like it's working. That's always a good sign for the most part. Could have typed something wrong. So that's going to take, just like a minute to run. What do we want to talk about? Well, at this point, you'll notice that we're actually going to get back a ton of data. It's not a bad thing. I mean, that's definitely not a bad thing by any standard. And I'm actually going to insert a cell below so you can see it. So we're going to say stock dictionary. Uh-oh. That's never a good sign. What happened? Well, let's see what happens here. I thought that went a little bit fast, but maybe I was wrong. Ah, fault string. What does that mean? Goodness. It's gonna be one of those nights. I'm just gonna check really quickly. Okay, perfect. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna stop it again because I don't want it to keep running. But anywho, the nice thing about TD Ameritrade is they do provide a good amount of fundamental data for free. So again, I'm not here to sell their accounts by any standards, but it's free. I mean, if you already have an account with them, that's great. You might want to think about it if this is going to be something where it's like you really need the information. Or, there's really other APIs out there too. I mean, it's not just TD Ameritrade. But I was kind of surprised, like with that particular series, I didn't think it was going to be that popular, and it actually was, which is a great thing. I mean, hell, when it's popular, by all means, that's great for me. But I think a lot of people are just kind of surprised that, like, oh, you can actually get a decent amount of data there. Okay, perfect, it's done. And so let's see what we get. Ooh, it's going to be nasty. All right, so you can see basically the key is just simply, the CUS IP. So that's just something that's unique to TD Ameritrade. And then the data that we have stored in it is just a bunch of different indicators. I mean, some of it's, fundamental, some of it's more technical. So, you got like 30-day moving month average, volume, dividend pay date, dividend growth. The other thing you got to keep in mind is not every symbol is going to have the same data. That's just the world of finance. Some stocks going to have the information available, other of it is not going to be available. So you just have to keep that in mind. What we're going to do though is we're going to take this data frame and we're going to now convert it into a data frame. And I think I just said it twice. We're going to take our dictionary and we're going to create it into a data frame. So take our dictionary and convert it into a data frame. Pandas makes this super easy. And so what we're going to do is do stock df pandas. We're going to create a data frame object. And this is how simple it is. You just simply pass through the dictionary. Wow. Pretty cool, right? Well, some people might not think it's cool, but I thought that, I always think that's amazing that it's like, that's like really the power of pandas right there. So right now we get this data frame. It's okay, but this is the problem. Right now I've got a column for each stock symbol. I really want these guys right here to be my columns. And so that's really easy to fix, but a lot of people, they might skip that step and be like, wait, why is it not? It's because you need to actually transpose it first. So what we're going to do is transpose the data frame. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to assign it to the old one. We're going to call stock df. And then we're going to call the transpose method. And then from here, whoa. Sorry about that. My phone was ringing. So yeah, we have to transpose the data frame first because right now the rows are, the rows should be the columns and the columns should be the rows. So we call the transpose method. And then usually what I like to do is just display it just to make sure everything is okay. So display the new data frame. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do display stock df. And then we're going to also display the shape just again to make sure and see, did we lose any? I mean, we probably didn't get every single one, but we probably got majority of them. And so we'll do stock df dot shape. Okay, perfect. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this. And then I forgot I want to do the head. Otherwise, it's going to show every little thing. And so we can see, okay, so 5,200. So we went from 5,800 to 5,200. So we lost about 600. That, again, kind of makes sense. TD Ameritrade doesn't make every single stock available. Some of them could have been international that they might just not have information on, or for whatever reason. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons of why that particular stock was not in there. But with the amount that we currently have, this is more than enough to do the analysis that we need to do. With 5,200, you can do pretty decent clustering. And really, this kind of shows the benefit of clustering because God forbid you had to actually cluster that manually. It could be a little bit challenging depending on the number of attributes that you're going to have to cluster it by. So with that being said, I am going to finish off the video. In our next video, we're going to go through selecting attributes and plotting some of our data. So we're going to select the attributes that we think are going to be defining factors for clusters, and then we're going to see kind of what the data looks like visually. And we're going to talk about why we chose to do lower dimensional analysis at this point. So thanks again for watching, everybody. We will see you in the next video.